The Zaltarian Empire had destroyed 47 different worlds in less than 100 years. Their weapons were strong and their ships were fast. When they found Earth floating in space like a blue marble, they smiled with sharp teeth. The Galactic Council met in their huge station and talked about the humans. These creatures had barely left their own planet. They still used bullets and bombs. They would fall in days, maybe hours. Commander Vexthor stood tall on his ship called Eternal Dominion. He looked at Earth through the big windows. His sensors told him everything. The humans had nuclear weapons, but they were old and slow. Their rockets used fire and smoke. Their soldiers carried metal guns. It was almost sad how weak they were. He pressed a button and spoke to his fleet. Begin the attack. Hit their military bases first. We need workers alive, not dead bodies everywhere. Down on Earth, a pilot named Jake Morrison was running to his jet. The alarms were screaming loud. His hands shook as he climbed into the cockpit of his F-35. The radio crackled with voices. Pilots were shouting. Commanders were giving orders. Nobody could believe what they were seeing. Giant ships were coming down from the sky. They were bigger than anything humans had ever built. Their hulls gleamed like silver in the sunlight. Jake pushed the throttle forward and his jet roared into the sky. All around him, other planes were taking off. Missiles streaked up from the ground. The alien ships just floated there waiting. Their shields would stop everything. But something strange happened. When the first missiles hit, the alien shields flickered like broken lights. 3 ships started falling. Fire poured from their sides. They crashed into the ocean with massive explosions. Jake couldn't believe his eyes. The aliens were supposed to be unbeatable. Commander Vexthor grabbed his chair as his ship shook. What just happened? His officers were typing fast on their computers. Sir, their weapons got through our shields. We lost 3 cruisers, but that's impossible. Their technology is primitive. The commander felt something he had never felt before in all his years of war. Fear. On the ground in Nevada, a soldier named Amy Rodriguez was setting up her machine gun. She was a lieutenant in the Marines. Her team had sandbags piled high around their position. When the alien dropships landed, huge doors opened. Soldiers in powered armor walked out. They looked like monsters from a nightmare. Their armor was thick and black. Energy weapons glowed on their arms. Amy didn't wait. She screamed the order. Fire! The machine guns opened up with a sound like thunder. Heavy bullets flew across the desert. The alien soldiers started falling. Their armor cracked and broke. Blue blood sprayed into the air. They tried to shoot back, but they were confused. How could such simple weapons hurt them? One alien managed to fire his energy weapon. The beam cut through a sandbag and killed 2 Marines. But then Amy shot him in the head with her rifle. He went down hard. All over the world, the same thing was happening. In China, tanks were destroying alien vehicles. In Russia, soldiers were using rocket launchers to blow up dropships. In Europe, fighter jets were shooting down alien aircraft. The invasion that was supposed to take hours was turning into a bloodbath. In a secret lab in Geneva, a scientist named Helen Carter was working fast. She had pieces of a crashed alien ship on her table. Her team was cutting them apart and studying them. What she found made her heart race. The alien technology was advanced, yes, but it was built for fighting other aliens. It assumed certain things about physics and chemistry, things that were different on Earth. She grabbed the phone and called the Pentagon. Our planet has a unique magnetic field. Their shields can't adapt to it. Their armor was designed to stop energy weapons, not bullets. We can hurt them. The general on the other end asked her what that meant. It means we have a chance. A real chance. Within 3 days, everything changed. The aliens were supposed to be conquering Earth. Instead, they were trapped in cities fighting for their lives. In Chicago, a sergeant named Kyle Bennett was leading his team through the subway tunnels. They knew every corner, every hiding spot. The aliens kept trying to chase them, but they didn't understand urban warfare. Kyle's team would hit them and disappear. Hit them and disappear. The aliens were going crazy with frustration. Up in space, things were even worse for the invaders. Commander Vexthor watched his tactical screens with horror. Human spacecraft were attacking his fleet. They were just modified shuttles and satellites, held together with tape and prayers. But they were piloted by people who seemed insane. One human pilot flew straight at a cruiser and crashed into it on purpose. The explosion destroyed the entire ship. A colonel named Lisa Green was in one of those shuttles. She had packed it full of explosives, every bomb and grenade they could find. She aimed for the reactor signature of an alien battleship. They shot at her, but she dodged and weaved. The targeting computers couldn't predict her movements. She was too random, too creative. She screamed into her radio as she ejected. "This is for Earth." The shuttle hit the battleship and everything went white. The explosion could be seen from the ground. Another alien ship was gone. At the Pentagon, a general named Paul Stevens was coordinating everything. Reports came in from every country. Brazil had used their air force to destroy an alien command center. Japan had modified their defense systems to target the weak points Helen Carter had discovered. India had sent 1 million soldiers to push back an alien landing force. Australia had turned the outback into a killing field full of traps and ambushes. The general looked at his staff and said something nobody expected. They thought we were divided. They thought we would fight each other instead of them. They were wrong. Commander Vex Thor finally accepted the truth. His empire had made a terrible mistake. These humans were not primitive. They were dangerous. They fought like demons. They sacrificed themselves without hesitation. They used weapons and tactics that no civilized species would ever consider. And worst of all, they were winning. He opened a channel to the Galactic Council. His pride was destroyed, but he had to tell them, "We need reinforcements immediately. The humans are not what we thought. They are far more deadly than anything we have ever faced. They do not surrender. They do not fear death. And they are beating us." The message traveled across space to the council station. When the leaders heard it, they could not believe what they were hearing. The Zoltarian Empire had never asked for help before, never in 1,000 years. What kind of species could do this? What kind of monsters lived on that blue planet? They decided to send a fleet, not just a small force, a massive armada of 3,000 ships. They would crush Earth completely. They would show these humans what real power looked like. But they did not understand. They were making the same mistake the Zoltarians had made. They thought humans were just another species to conquer. They had no idea what was coming. 3 days had passed since the aliens first arrived. Commander Vex Thor sat in his command chair and stared at the reports. His fleet had lost 60 ships. 60. Against a species that barely had space travel. His soldiers were pinned down in every major city. The humans kept attacking from places they couldn't predict. Sewers, rooftops, underground tunnels. They were like ghosts. In Chicago, Sergeant Kyle Bennett was planning another ambush. His team had been fighting without sleep for 2 days straight. They were exhausted, but they kept going. Kyle had mapped out every subway tunnel in his head. He knew which buildings had the best sniper positions. He knew where the aliens would patrol next. His radio crackled. "We've got a group of 6 aliens moving down State Street. They're heading your way," Kyle signaled to his team. They moved into position silently. The aliens were using scanners to search for humans, but the scanners didn't work well in cities. Too much metal, too much interference. When the alien squad walked past the subway entrance, Kyle's team struck. Grenades flew through the air. Machine guns opened fire. The aliens went down before they could even raise their weapons. "Move out," Kyle ordered. They disappeared into the tunnels before reinforcements could arrive. This was how you fought a superior enemy. Hit and run. Never stay still. Never fight fair. Up in orbit, Colonel Lisa Green was organizing another attack. She had survived her suicide run by ejecting at the last second. Now she was back and angrier than before. She had 50 modified shuttles ready to launch. Each one was packed with explosives. Each one had a volunteer pilot. She spoke to the pilots over the radio. "You all know this is dangerous. Some of you won't make it back. But every alien ship we destroy is one less threat to Earth. Are you ready?" Every single pilot answered yes. They launched together, spreading out in different directions. The alien point defense systems tried to shoot them down, but there were too many targets. 12 shuttles made it through. 12 explosions lit up the darkness of space. 12 alien ships died. Lisa's shuttle took damage, but she managed to limp back to the space station. Her co-pilot, a young man named Danny Clark, was bleeding from a head wound, but he was smiling. "We got them. We actually got them." Down on Earth, Dr. Helen Carter was working with scientists from 20 different countries. They had set up a command center in an old bunker. Computer screens showed data from all over the world. Every time they shot down an alien ship, they studied the wreckage. Every time they captured alien equipment, they tore it apart to understand it. Helen stood in front of a holographic display. She was explaining her latest discovery to a room full of military officers. The aliens use a specific frequency for their communications. If we can jam that frequency, they can't coordinate their attacks. We've built devices that can do this. We need to deploy them in every combat zone. A general asked how long it would take. Helen smiled. They're already being installed. By tomorrow morning, every alien unit on Earth will be deaf and blind to each other. In Moscow, Russian forces were preparing a counterattack. General Dmitry Volkov had lost his wife in the first alien strike. Now he was channeling his grief into fury. His tank division surrounded an alien landing zone. Thousands of aliens were dug in, waiting for supplies from orbit. Those supplies weren't coming anymore. Lisa Green and her pilots had destroyed the transport ships. Volkov gave the order. Artillery guns roared to life. Rockets streaked across the sky. The aliens tried to shield themselves, but the jamming devices were working. They couldn't call for help. They couldn't organize a defense. The Russian tanks rolled forward and crushed everything in their path. In Beijing, Chinese forces were using a different strategy. General Li Chen had mobilized 2 million soldiers. The aliens had superior technology, but they didn't have superior numbers. Not anymore. Wave after wave of soldiers attacked the alien positions. The aliens killed thousands, but thousands more kept coming. Eventually, the aliens ran out of ammunition. Then the real slaughter began. Commander Vexthor received reports from the ground. They were all the same: retreat, heavy casualties. Need immediate evacuation. He slammed his fist on the control panel. This was supposed to be easy. This was supposed to be quick. How had everything gone so wrong? His second-in-command spoke quietly. Sir, we should withdraw. We can regroup and wait for the Council fleet to arrive. We cannot win this battle alone. Vexthor wanted to argue, but he knew it was true. Pull back all ground forces. Get them off that planet. We'll maintain orbit until reinforcements arrive. But pulling back wasn't easy. In London, British special forces were hunting alien soldiers through the streets. In Sydney, Australian troops had learned to use the aliens' own weapons against them. In Mexico City, civilians were fighting alongside soldiers, throwing Molotov cocktails at alien vehicles. Every alien unit trying to reach their evacuation points had to fight through hell first. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez was now a captain. She had been promoted on the battlefield. Her unit was in California, blocking the route to an alien landing pad. The aliens needed to reach their ships, but Amy wasn't going to let them. She had positioned her Marines on the high ground with perfect fields of fire. The aliens came in a desperate rush. They had no choice. Energy beams and human bullets filled the air. Men died on both sides, but the Marines held their ground. When the aliens finally broke through, only half of them made it to their ships. The rest were left behind, dead or dying. In space, something unexpected happened. Commander Vexthor was ordering his ships to maintain defensive positions when one of his officers did something shocking. Commander, I cannot follow these orders anymore. We came here to conquer a peaceful species. Instead, we found warriors. We have killed thousands of them, but they keep fighting. This is wrong. Vexthor turned to see his tactical officer standing with several other crew members. They had removed their weapons and placed them on the floor. We wish to defect. We wish to help the humans. Before Vexthor could respond, alarms started blaring. More ships in his fleet were reporting mutinies. Dozens of his own people were refusing to fight. They had seen how the humans treated prisoners. They had heard stories of wounded aliens being given medical care instead of being executed. It was unlike anything they had experienced in the rigid, brutal hierarchy of the Empire. Vexthor made a decision that would change his life. He looked at his officers and said something that shocked everyone. I agree, this war is wrong. We attacked without provocation. We came as conquerors and were met by defenders. The humans fight for their homes, for their families, for concepts we have forgotten. Honor, courage, love. He turned to his communications officer. Send a message to Earth. Tell them I wish to discuss terms. At the Pentagon, General Paul Stevens received the message with suspicion. It could be a trick. But the commander was offering intelligence, tactical data, everything. He was offering to bring his remaining ships over to Earth's side. Stevens made a gamble. He agreed to meet. The meeting took place on neutral ground, an abandoned space station between Earth and the Moon. Stevens brought soldiers. Vexthor came alone and unarmed. The two military leaders faced each other. Vexthor spoke first. I have fought for 30 years. I have conquered 12 worlds. I have never seen a species like yours. You fight not just for survival, but for each other. That is something my empire lost long ago. I choose to stand with those who remember what they are fighting for. Stephen studied the alien commander for a long moment. If you betray us, you die. If you help us and we lose, you die anyway. Why take this risk? Vexthor's answer was simple. Because for the first time in my life, I will be fighting for something that matters. The alliance was formed. Vexthor brought his remaining ships and his knowledge of Galactic Council tactics. But more importantly, he brought hope. If one alien commander could see the truth, maybe others would too. Maybe this war could end differently than anyone expected. Back on Earth, President Margaret Hayes addressed the world. 6 days from now, the largest fleet in galactic history will arrive. 3,000 ships. They come to finish what the first wave started. But we have something they don't expect. We have allies now. We have knowledge. And most importantly, we have each other. Humanity will not fall. Not today, not ever. Across the planet, people prepared for the coming battle. Soldiers trained. Scientists built new weapons. Civilians stockpiled supplies and prepared shelters. Everyone knew what was at stake. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about showing the galaxy that Earth would not kneel. 6 days. That was all the time they had. 6 days to prepare for the fight of their lives. The Galactic Council fleet appeared at the edge of the solar system like a swarm of angry hornets. 3,000 ships in perfect formation. Admiral Krathnir commanded from his flagship. He was old and experienced. He had fought in 50 wars and won them all. This would be no different. The humans had defeated one small invasion force through luck and surprise. They would not defeat the full might of the Council. He spoke to his fleet commanders. Advance slowly. Let them see what approaches. Let them understand their fate. On Earth, every telescope and radar pointed toward the incoming threat. The screens showed ship after ship after ship. There were so many that they blocked out the stars. President Margaret Hayes stood in the war room deep underground. Around her were generals and scientists and leaders from every nation. They all watched the screens in silence. Finally, she spoke. This is it. This is what we've been preparing for. Send the order. Launch Phase 1. All across Earth, thousands of missiles launched at the same time, but they weren't aimed at the fleet. They were aimed at specific points in space around the planet. When they exploded, they created massive clouds of metal particles and electromagnetic pulses. The Council sensors started going crazy. They couldn't see through the interference. Admiral Krathnir frowned. Crude but effective at close range. Maintain formation. Their planetary weapons cannot reach us here, he was wrong. Deep in the Pacific Ocean, a submarine called USS Valiant was preparing for its final mission. Captain Ryan Murphy had volunteered his entire crew. They all knew they weren't coming back. The submarine carried 24 nuclear missiles, but these weren't normal warheads. Dr. Helen Carter had modified them to produce electromagnetic pulses tuned to disrupt alien technology. Murphy gave the order calmly. Launch all missiles. The weapons burst from the ocean and climbed toward space on pillars of flame. When they reached the Council fleet and detonated, something amazing happened. The electromagnetic pulses hit the alien ships like invisible hammers. Shields flickered and died. Propulsion systems failed. Hundreds of ships went dark. Now, General Paul Stevens shouted from his command center. From hidden positions throughout the solar system, human forces attacked. Modified spacecraft emerged from behind asteroids and moons. They carried simple weapons. Iron rods accelerated to incredible speeds. Against the unshielded alien ships, they punched through hulls like paper. Explosions blossomed across the fleet. Captain Jake Morrison led a squadron of fighters from a secret base on the far side of the moon. They had launched with minimal power to avoid detection. Now they lit up their engines and dove into the chaos. Their missiles found targets that couldn't defend themselves. 3 capital ships exploded before the aliens could react. Break and scatter. Jake ordered his pilots. Don't give them a target. The Council fleet was in chaos. Admiral Krathnir screamed orders, but his communication systems were barely working. Ships collided with each other. Captains made their own decisions without coordination. In 10 minutes, the humans had destroyed 200 ships, but the Council fleet was adapting. Engineers worked frantically to restore shields and sensors. The remaining ships formed defensive clusters. They began to return fire. Human fighters started exploding. Modified shuttles were blown apart. The battle was far from over. On Earth's surface, Captain Amy Rodriguez prepared her team for a crazy mission. They were going to board disabled alien ships and capture them, breach pods launched from hidden facilities. These were small armored capsules with one purpose: smash through alien hulls and deliver soldiers inside. Amy's pod hit a destroyer with tremendous force. Shaped charges blew a hole in the armor. Her team poured through with guns ready. The corridors were dark and filled with smoke. Aliens stumbled around, confused and disoriented. The fighting was brutal and close. Bullets and energy beams flew in the narrow spaces. Amy shot an alien officer and grabbed his weapon. She figured out how to fire it and used it against his comrades. Her team fought their way to the bridge. When they burst through the door, the captain tried to activate the self-destruct. Amy shot him before he could finish. "Bridge secured," she reported on the radio. "We're turning this ship's guns on the fleet." The captured destroyer's weapons came online and began firing at other council ships. The aliens couldn't believe what was happening. The humans were stealing their vessels in the middle of battle. All across the battlefield, boarding teams achieved similar successes. Sergeant Kyle Bennett's unit captured a cruiser. Lieutenant Danny Clark's team took a supply ship. The humans were using tactics the Galactic Council had never imagined. No civilized species boarded enemy ships during active combat. It was considered insane. But humans didn't care about what was considered civilized. Admiral Crathnir watched his fleet being torn apart. His tactical officer was in shock. "Sir, they're not fighting like any species we've ever encountered. They board ships that could self-destruct at any moment. They fly ships on collision courses with our vessels. They sacrifice themselves without hesitation. How do we fight an enemy that doesn't fear death?" Crathnir had no answer. He had studied warfare for 50 years, but nothing had prepared him for this. The humans used every weapon they had. Nuclear missiles streaked up from Earth. Chemical weapons were deployed. Biological agents were loaded into warheads. The humans were fighting a total war with no restraints and no mercy. In her laboratory in Geneva, Dr. Helen Carter watched the battle on multiple screens. Her team had one final weapon ready. They had studied the alien reactor systems and found a critical flaw. Every council ship used the same basic power generation design, and that design had a weakness that could be exploited. She called General Stevens on the secure line. "We're ready with the pulse weapon, but you need to understand the risks. Best case, we disable every enemy ship in the solar system. Worst case, we could cause reactor explosions that irradiate orbital space. Earth might be uninhabitable for decades." Stevens looked at his tactical display. The council fleet was regrouping. Despite their losses, they still had over 2,000 ships operational. If they organized a coordinated assault now, Earth would be destroyed. "Do it," he ordered without hesitation. Helen activated the device. It was built from components scavenged from a dozen alien ships. The engineers had said it wouldn't work. It violated too many principles of council technology, but it worked according to human physics, and that was what mattered. A pulse of invisible energy radiated outward from Earth. It moved at the speed of light. When it touched the council ships, their reactors began to fluctuate wildly. Warning alarms screamed on every bridge. Engineers tried desperately to shut down power cores before they exploded. Ship after ship went dark. Their reactors were offline, but their crews were alive. They drifted helplessly in space, completely powerless. Admiral Crathnir's flagship was one of the few that managed to jump to faster than light speed before the pulse arrived. He escaped with less than 300 ships. As he fled, he transmitted one final message to the Galactic Council. The humans cannot be defeated by conventional warfare. They are unlike any species in recorded history. They do not fear death. They do not accept defeat. They learn and adapt faster than any computer simulation predicted. If this war continues, they will eventually destroy us. I recommend immediate ceasefire and negotiations. In orbit around Earth, the battlefield went quiet. Thousands of council ships floated in the void. Their crews were alive but helpless. Their weapons were offline. Their communications were dead. They waited in the darkness, wondering if the humans would show mercy or revenge. On Earth, the debate began immediately. Military leaders wanted to destroy the helpless ships. These aliens had come to conquer. They deserved no mercy, but President Hayes refused. "If we slaughter helpless prisoners, we prove them right about us. We show them that we're the monsters they feared." General Stevens argued for an hour, but Hayes wouldn't budge. Finally, he gave the order. "Send boarding teams. Secure the ships and take the crews prisoner. Treat them according to the rules of war. Captain Amy Rodriguez led the humanitarian effort. Her teams boarded ship after ship, taking control and providing aid. Many aliens were injured. Their life support systems were failing. Human medics worked alongside captured alien doctors. They shared knowledge and saved lives. One Zoltarian officer looked at Amy with confusion. "We came to enslave your world. Why do you help us now?" Amy's answer was simple. "Because we're human. We can be your worst enemy in battle. But after the battle ends, we remember our humanity." Word spread through the captured fleet. The humans were treating prisoners well. They were providing food and medical care. They weren't torturing or executing anyone. Many aliens couldn't comprehend this behavior. They had been raised in brutal military hierarchies where weakness meant death. Admiral Krathner returned to council space and delivered his report in person. The council members listened in stunned silence. The Zoltarian Empire had been defeated. Now the full council fleet had been defeated. In 10,000 years of galactic history, this had never happened. "What do we do now?" one counselor asked. Krathner's answer surprised everyone. "We negotiate. The humans have proven they cannot be conquered, but perhaps they can be reasoned with. Perhaps there is another way forward." The council debated for hours. Some wanted to send more fleets. Some wanted to quarantine Earth forever. But Elder Seraph spoke with wisdom. "We have been complacent for too long. We conquered species and forced them into our civilization. We forgot that there are other ways to live, other ways to think. These humans have reminded us of that lesson. We should listen." 2 weeks after the Great Battle, Admiral Krathner returned to Earth's solar system. This time he brought no weapons. His small fleet of 50 ships transmitted a message asking for permission to approach. The message was simple. "We wish to talk. We wish to negotiate peace." In the war room beneath Colorado, President Margaret Hayes met with her advisors. General Paul Stevens was suspicious. It could be a trap. They could be buying time to bring another fleet. Hayes shook her head. If they wanted to keep fighting, they would keep fighting. Something has changed. We should hear what they have to say. The meeting was arranged to take place on the International Space Station. Human engineers had expanded it quickly to accommodate both species. General Stevens would represent Earth's military. President Hayes would speak for the governments. And across the table would sit Admiral Krathner and ambassadors from the Galactic Council. Captain Amy Rodriguez was assigned to security. She positioned her best soldiers throughout the station. If the aliens tried anything, they would regret it. But as the alien delegation arrived, she noticed something interesting. They came unarmed. They moved carefully, almost nervously. These were not conquerors. These were defeated beings seeking peace. The meeting room was simple. A long table with chairs on both sides. Admiral Krathner sat down slowly. His face was hard to read, but his body language showed exhaustion. Beside him sat Elder Seraph, a being that looked like it was made of crystal and light. The elder's voice sounded like wind chimes when it spoke. "We underestimated you," Krathner began. "Not just your weapons or your tactics. We underestimated what drives you. We assumed you were like us, motivated by logic and survival. We did not understand that humans fight for things we have forgotten. Honor, loyalty, love of home." President Hayes leaned forward. "What happens now? Your fleet is defeated. Your soldiers are our prisoners. But we don't want endless war. We want to live in peace and explore the galaxy." Elder Seraph spoke next. "That decision rests with you. The Council can bring more ships. We can blockade your system and prevent you from ever leaving. We can wage war for generations, or we can recognize you as equals and offer membership in the galactic community." General Stevens laughed harshly. "Equals. You came here to conquer us. You tried to enslave our world. Now you offer friendship." Krathner looked directly at Stevens. "And you defeated us. In 10,000 years of Council history, no species has ever defeated a full invasion fleet. You have earned respect through strength. That is a language the galaxy understands." The negotiations continued for 3 days. Humanity had clear demands. First, all Council forces must leave the solar system immediately. Second, all alien technology left behind must be given to Earth along with access to Council scientific databases. Third, humanity would have independent status. They would not be subject to council laws, but they could participate in galactic trade and diplomacy. Elder Seraph found this troubling. You ask to be separate but also connected. You want freedom but also participation. This has never been done before. Hayes smiled slightly. Get used to things that have never been done before. That is what humanity does best. The council ambassadors discussed among themselves in languages humans couldn't understand. Finally, Elder Seraph spoke again. We agree to your terms with one condition. You must share some of your innovations with the council, not your weapons or military tactics, but your medical advances and peaceful technologies. Dr. Helen Carter was brought into the negotiations at this point. She had been listening from another room. She entered and placed a data drive on the table. Here are the medical techniques we developed during the war. New surgical methods, better treatments for radiation exposure, advanced prosthetics for wounded soldiers. We give this freely because we believe knowledge should be shared. The alien ambassadors were surprised. You would share this, even after we attacked you? Helen's voice was firm. We share it because we don't want to be enemies forever. We want to explore the galaxy and meet new species. We want to learn and grow. But we will do all of this on our own terms. In orbit around Earth, the captured alien crews were being processed. Captain Jake Morrison had been assigned to oversee the prisoner camps on the moon. Thousands of aliens were being held there in facilities built quickly from prefabricated modules. The conditions were basic but humane. The aliens had food, water, medical care, and shelter. Jake walked through the camps daily and talked to the prisoners. Many of them were confused by their treatment. A Kurath soldier named Venka asked him a question. Why do you treat us well? We came to destroy you. Jake sat down on a bench next to the alien. Because the war is over for you, you're not a threat anymore. You're just a soldier who was following orders. We understand that. Venka was silent for a long moment. In the council military, prisoners are not treated this way. They are used for labor or executed. You humans are strange. Jake smiled. Yeah, we get that a lot. Back at the negotiating table, the final terms of the treaty were being written. Humanity would release all prisoners unharmed and return them to council space. The council would withdraw all forces and recognize Earth as an independent world. Trade and diplomatic relations would be established. And most importantly, humanity would be allowed to explore the galaxy freely. Commander Vexthor, who had defected to Earth's side, sat in on the final session. He had provided valuable intelligence during the war. Now he spoke about the future. The galaxy will not know what to make of you. Some species will fear you, others will admire you, but all will respect you. President Hayes asked the important question. What about your empire, the Zoltarians? Will they accept this treaty? Vexthor's answer was honest. Some will, some will not. There may be Zoltarian ships that refuse to accept the peace. They may attack human vessels or colonies. You must be prepared for this. General Stevens nodded. We're always prepared. That's what this war taught the galaxy. You don't mess with Earth. The treaty was signed by all parties 6 weeks after the Great Battle. News of the agreement spread across the galaxy at faster than light speed. Some species celebrated, others were horrified. The Galactic Council's age of unchallenged dominance was over. A new power had emerged, a power that played by its own rules. On Earth, the celebration was cautious. People were happy the war was over, but they knew the future was uncertain. Cities began to rebuild. Families mourned their dead. Soldiers returned home. But everyone knew that life had changed forever. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe, and the universe now knew about humanity. Dr. Helen Carter stood in her laboratory looking at alien technology spread across her workbenches. With the treaty signed, the Council had provided access to their entire scientific database, thousands of years of accumulated knowledge. She felt overwhelmed but excited. We're going to learn so much. We're going to advance centuries in just years. Her assistant, a young scientist named Peter Griffin, asked the obvious question. What do we do first? Helen smiled. We learn everything we can, then we take their technology and our innovation and we create something entirely new. We show the galaxy what humans can do when we're not fighting for survival. In military bases around the world, training continued. Major Kyle Bennett was teaching new recruits the tactics that had saved Earth. He stood before a class of young soldiers and spoke with intensity. The galaxy thinks we won because we got lucky. They're wrong. We won because we think differently. We adapt, we improvise. We never give up. That's what makes us human. That's what makes us dangerous. Captain Amy Rodriguez had been promoted to major. She was now in charge of training the first human space marines. These soldiers would serve on ships exploring the galaxy. They needed to know how to fight in zero gravity, how to board enemy vessels, how to survive in hostile environments. The training was brutal but necessary. Brigadier General Lisa Green was planning humanity's first deep space expedition. Using a captured council ship retrofitted with human systems, they would travel beyond the solar system. The crew would be volunteers, scientists, diplomats, and soldiers. They would carry Earth's flag to distant stars. The ship was named the Explorer. It sat in orbit being prepared for its journey. Engineers worked around the clock installing human computers and life support. The alien systems were too different. Humans needed their own technology to feel safe. Captain Jake Morrison volunteered to be the ship's chief pilot. He stood on the bridge and looked at the controls. Half alien, half human. It was a perfect symbol of what Earth had become. A bridge between two worlds. A species that had taken the best of both and made something new. President Hayes gave a speech on the day the Explorer launched. She stood before cameras broadcasting to the entire world. Today we take our first steps into a larger galaxy. We go not as conquerors but as explorers. We go not to dominate but to learn. But let the galaxy remember this. Earth will never be conquered. Earth will never submit. We are free and we will remain free forever. The Explorer's engines lit up and the ship began to move. It accelerated slowly at first, then faster and faster. When it reached the edge of the solar system, it engaged the faster-than-light drive that human engineers had barely learned to operate. There was a flash of light and the ship vanished. Humanity had left home. The galaxy would never be the same. The Explorer traveled through space at speeds that would have been impossible just months before. Captain Jake Morrison sat in the pilot's chair watching stars streak past the view screen. His crew of 50 humans was the first to venture beyond the solar system, with permission from the Galactic Council. They were making history with every parsec traveled. The ship's destination was a council trade station called Nexus Point 7. It was a neutral meeting place where hundreds of species conducted business. The council had agreed to let humans visit and establish diplomatic relations. But Jake knew that not everyone would be happy to see them. Earth had defeated the council's fleet. That made enemies. In the cargo bay, Major Amy Rodriguez inspected her security team. 20 Marines in full combat gear. They weren't expecting trouble, but they were ready for it. Amy had learned during the war that being prepared meant staying alive. She checked each soldier's weapon and armor personally. If something went wrong at the station, her team would protect the diplomats and scientists. Dr. Helen Carter was in the science lab studying the star charts. The galaxy was enormous. Millions of worlds. Thousands of spacefaring species. Centuries of history that humans knew nothing about. She felt small but excited. This was what she had dreamed of her entire life. Contact with alien civilizations. Access to knowledge beyond Earth's understanding. Her assistant Peter Griffin worked beside her cataloging samples of alien materials they had been given. Each substance had properties that defied Earth physics. One metal was lighter than aluminum but stronger than titanium. Another material could conduct electricity without any resistance. The possibilities were endless. Back on Earth, the world was changing rapidly. Cities were being rebuilt with alien construction techniques. Hospitals used new medical equipment based on council technology. Schools taught children about the galaxy and the species that lived among the stars. But not everything was peaceful. In the Australian outback, a group of Zaltarian ships had refused to accept the treaty. Commander Vex Thor had warned this might happen. 20 ships loyal to the old empire attacked a human settlement on Mars. They killed 300 colonists before Earth's defense forces could respond. Major Kyle Bennett led the counterattack. His ships cornered the Zaltarians near Jupiter and destroyed every single one. No survivors, no mercy. The message was clear. Attack humans and die. The incident was reported to the Galactic Council. Elder Seraph expressed regret, but explained that the Council could not control every ship in the galaxy. Rogue elements exist in every civilization. What matters is how you respond. President Margaret Hayes responded by accelerating Earth's military expansion. If there were hostile forces out there, humanity needed to be ready. Shipyards in orbit began constructing warships that combined human and alien technology. These vessels were faster and more deadly than anything the Council had ever seen. They were commanded by officers who had fought in the war and knew how to win. Brigadier General Lisa Green oversaw the construction of the first human battleship. It was called the Defender. The ship was massive, bristling with weapons both kinetic and energy-based. Its armor was a human alloy that could withstand plasma fire. Its engines were modified alien drives that human engineers had improved. When it launched from Earth orbit, every nation on the planet watched with pride. At Nexus Point 7, the Explorer finally arrived. Jake brought the ship in slowly and carefully. The station was enormous. It looked like a city floating in space. Hundreds of ships were docked at various ports. Species of every shape and size moved through the corridors. Some walked, some flew, some slithered. It was overwhelming. The human delegation stepped off the ship and immediately drew attention. Aliens stopped and stared. Whispers spread through the crowd. Those are the humans. The ones who defeated the Council fleet. The ones who fight like demons. Ambassador Sarah Mitchell led the diplomatic team. She was a former senator who had volunteered for this mission. She walked with confidence despite the stares. Beside her walked Dr. Helen Carter and Major Amy Rodriguez. The three women represented Earth's best: diplomacy, science, and military strength. They were met by a council representative named Trelvax. He was tall and thin with skin like polished stone. "Welcome to Nexus Point 7. I will escort you to the diplomatic quarter. Please stay close. Not all species here are friendly to humans." As they walked through the station, Amy noticed groups of aliens watching them with hostile eyes. Her hand stayed near her weapon. The tension was thick enough to cut. Finally, they reached a secure section where Earth had been given temporary quarters. The rooms were small but functional. That evening, there was a reception for new species joining the galactic community. Sarah Mitchell attended wearing a formal dress that represented Earth's diversity. She moved through the crowd, introducing herself to alien dignitaries. Some were polite, others were cold. A few were openly hostile. One ambassador from the Kryn hegemony confronted her directly. "Your species is violent and unpredictable. You should have been quarantined, not welcomed. You are a threat to galactic peace." Sarah met his eyes calmly. "We defended our home when attacked. If that makes us violent, then yes, we are violent. But we did not start this war. Your council did. We simply finished it." The Kryn ambassador had no response to that. He turned and walked away. But Sarah knew she had made an enemy. The galaxy was full of species that feared humanity's strength. They would look for any excuse to isolate or attack Earth. Meanwhile, Dr. Helen Carter was in a scientific exchange program. She met with researchers from a dozen different species. They shared knowledge about physics, chemistry, and biology. Helen was amazed by how much there was to learn. But she also noticed something interesting. Many alien scientists were rigid in their thinking. They followed established principles and rarely questioned them. Human scientists were different. They questioned everything. They experimented constantly. They took risks. One alien scientist, a being named Quathen, expressed frustration. "Your questions make no sense. You ask why things work instead of simply accepting that they work." "This is inefficient," Helen smiled. "That's how we make breakthroughs. We don't accept limits. We push boundaries. That's how we defeated your fleet. We used weapons and tactics you never imagined because we think differently." Qua then considered this. "Perhaps there is wisdom in your chaos. Perhaps the Council has become too ordered, too predictable. You humans may teach us to think in new ways." Back on Earth, Commander Vexthor was helping to train human officers in the use of alien technology. He had fully integrated into Earth's military structure. When asked why he chose to stay, his answer was always the same: "Because I finally found a cause worth fighting for." He stood before a class of young officers explaining Council battle tactics. "Your advantage is that you think like warriors, not like programmers. Council ships follow algorithms and established patterns. You improvise and adapt. Never lose that edge. The moment you start fighting like them, you start losing like them." At Nexus Point 7, tensions were rising. A group of militant aliens called the Purity Front began protesting humanity's presence. They carried signs and chanted slogans. "Humans are primitives. Humans are savages. Send them back to their world." Major Amy Rodriguez watched them carefully. The protest was peaceful so far, but that could change quickly. On the third day, it did change. A Purity Front member threw an explosive device at the human quarters. Amy's training kicked in instantly. She tackled Ambassador Mitchell to the ground as the explosion ripped through the corridor. 3 humans were injured. 1 alien bystander was killed. Amy and her Marines responded immediately. They secured the area and began pursuing the attacker. The station security tried to stop them, but Amy ignored their orders. She was not going to let someone attack her people and escape. Her team cornered the terrorist in a cargo bay. He tried to detonate another bomb, but Amy shot him before he could trigger it. The incident caused a major diplomatic crisis. The Galactic Council demanded that Amy be punished for killing a station resident. President Hayes refused absolutely. He attacked us. She defended her people. If the Council cannot provide security, we will provide our own. Elder Seraph worked to calm the situation. The human response was justified under our own laws. The terrorist will be condemned. The Purity Front will be banned from all Council stations. We apologize for this incident, but the damage was done. Humanity now knew that the galaxy was not a safe place. There were species that wanted them dead, species that feared them, species that would do anything to see Earth destroyed. The age of innocence was over. Captain Jake Morrison prepared the Explorer for departure. The diplomatic mission had achieved some success, but also revealed the dangers ahead. As the ship left the station, Jake looked back at the massive structure. Somewhere in that crowd of aliens were friends and enemies. The challenge was figuring out which was which. The Explorer returned to Earth 6 months after launching. The crew was greeted as heroes. They had established first contact with dozens of species. They had gathered intelligence about galactic politics. They had proven that humans could survive in the wider galaxy, but they had also learned that survival would require constant vigilance. President Hayes addressed the world once again. We have seen the galaxy, and the galaxy has seen us. We have made friends and we have made enemies. But most importantly, we have made ourselves known. Earth is no longer an isolated world. We are part of something larger now, something dangerous and exciting and full of possibility. The future will not be easy. But when has anything worthwhile ever been easy? We are humanity. We survived ice ages and plagues. We survived world wars and alien invasions. We will survive whatever comes next because that is what we do. We endure, we adapt, we overcome. In orbit, the Defender and 20 other warships patrolled the solar system. On the Moon and Mars, colonies expanded rapidly. In laboratories around Earth, scientists worked on new technologies. And throughout the galaxy, species watched humanity with a mixture of fear, respect, and curiosity. The Galactic Council's complacency had been shattered. A new power had emerged, and the age of human expansion had only just begun.